All right, welcome and thank you so much for attending our Growing Safely Safety Planning for Small Farms webinar today. Texas AgrAbility Project is a grant-funded project through the USDA National Institute for Food and Agriculture. We are a part of a nationwide network of AgrAbility projects. Each project is a partnership between a land-grant university and a nonprofit, went a little too far ahead, in a nonprofit disability services organization. Texas AgrAbility is a project, a part of the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension and partners with Brazos Valley Center of Independent Living. Texas AgrAbility provides services for individuals with disabilities, chronic health conditions, and functional limitations in agriculture. Today we'll be hearing from David Douphrate. He is an associate professor in the Department of Environmental and Occupational Health, School of Public Health at Texas A&M University. Dr. Douphrate earned a PhD in environmental health with an emphasis in occupational ergonomics and safety from Colorado State University. Dr. Douphrate also holds a master's in physical therapy from the University of Texas Medical Branch at Galveston, and has an MBA from the University of Mary Hardin-Baylor. Dr. Douphrate earned his Bachelor of Science degree in kinesiology from Texas A&M University and is a certified professional ergonomist and a certified safety professional. His research and outreach focus for the past 20 years has been centered in the agricultural industry. Dr. Douphrate is partnered with multiple agricultural producer operations in many states, working diligently to earn and learn the industry, to learn the industry needs while simultaneously gaining the trust of industry stakeholders, meaning owners, managers, and workers. Through these efforts, he is recognized as a trusted partner to address worker health and safety on farms through research, outreach, translation, dissemination initiatives. Dr. Douphrate, thank you for being here today. And I'm going to hand this over to you.
Thank you very much, Megan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, I can.
All right, let me switch screens here. Share my screen. All right, can you see the screen?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Thank you for joining us today. It really is an honor for me to be given the opportunity to speak to you. I appreciate the introduction. As you probably heard there, that I am on faculty at Texas A&M University in the School of Public Health, and I concentrate in occupational health and safety. And so my research, my outreach for nearly 2 decades now has been focused on the agricultural sector. But I really do appreciate the mission of AgrAbility because I am a physical therapist as well. And so I've worked with a number of workers and owners in multiple states and multiple crops, and as well as livestock who have sustained injuries, and helping them to get back in the tractor or to get back in the field, or just to work on a farm again after their injury. And so I really do appreciate the mission and what AgrAbility does. And so today I'm going to be presenting on a topic of safety management. Basically, we've titled this presentation called Growing Safely, Safety Planning for Small Farms. And so just by a show of hands, if you could click the raise your hand button at the bottom of your screen. Is everybody in Texas? Everybody on the call located in Texas? Just out of curiosity.
Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. And so I'm assuming that we have some that are, well, most, if not all, are producers that are on the call, that are ag producers. And so I'm wondering how many on the call are on your operation. Do you have livestock, or are you primarily crops, or both? So how many crop producers do we have on the call?
Dr. Douphrate, and I misspoke. We do have somebody on from Nebraska.
Oh, Nebraska, fantastic. Welcome. Okay. Got a colleague up in Nebraska. Okay, and how many are in livestock? Anyone? I'm not seeing any hand. There's one. Heidi's a producer. Okay, cool. All right, so that'll help me kind of tailor the presentation today around what you might be wanting to hear. And so primarily what we're going to be talking about today is safety management in agriculture, safety management on farms, how to plan a safety management program and how to execute it. And so here are some of the objectives. I want to talk about some of the policies and procedures, how to establish those safety management policies and procedures. We'll talk about some of the hazards, how to identify safety hazards on a farm, and then also preventing and controlling those hazards. And then I want to touch a little bit on educating and training employees. Some of you may employ workers on the farm, and some of you may employ workers who may not have English as their primary language. And so I'm going to talk about some of the challenges and what are the requirements for safety training for workers. And then lastly, how to evaluate training programs and then the resources. And then I'm going to open it up at the very end of the presentation. I'm going to give you my contact information for you to contact me, or AgrAbility will let you have my contact information. If you might have any follow-up questions or issues on the farm, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I can help you out there as well. So why are we talking safety, farming safety? Why is that an issue? And so I wanted to first start off a little bit with about 4 slides showing the most recent data regarding fatal work injuries in the U.S. And you can see here, this is the number of fatal work injuries broken down by different industrial sectors. And you can see that agriculture has the 3rd highest number of fatalities on agriculture operations. Now, this includes not just agriculture, but forestry and fishing as well. So the way that our federal government classifies the industry, they combine ag, forestry, and fishing, as well as hunting. And so you can see here that ag, forestry, and fishing has the 3rd highest total number of fatal work injuries in their sector. And so, okay, they're behind transportation and warehousing, and then also construction. But when you normalize this data, meaning you compare that to the total number of workers in this industrial sector, you can see that the rate of fatal injuries in ag, forestry, and fishing jumps to number 1. So historically, the ag, forestry, and fishing sector has the highest fatal work injury rate among all industrial sectors. And that's why it is so important to address safety management on these farms, because the fatality rate is very high. So if we look at just non-fatal injuries, those obviously that do not result in the death of the injured party. Ag, forestry, and fishing is pretty low as far as the total number of non-fatal work injuries. But when you normalize it and you compare it to the total number of workers in the sector, it jumps again to number 1. Now, this is a very gross underestimation of the total number of fatalities and non-fatal injuries in this sector, because those small farming operations are not counted in this data. So the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics and OSHA, they require larger employers to report their fatalities and their injuries. However, those operations of 10 or fewer employees or workers are not obligated to report these numbers. And that's where we, in other research studies, shows that these smaller farming operations make up the bulk of these fatalities, but they are not captured in these US fatality and non-fatality rates. And so that's a big issue. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we'll talk about how to address safety management on a farm. So the safety hazards on a farm can come from a number of different areas. Livestock probably being a large component, but machinery is the #1 driver of injuries and fatalities on a farm, followed by livestock. And then you've got other hazards, and these are not all encompassing. These are just a few that I'm going to throw out there. Musculoskeletal injuries, just the aches and pains, muscle strains and ligamentous strains or sprains on a farm. And then we've got confined spaces. Some of you may have grain storage facilities. Those are considered confined spaces and run the risk of entrapping the worker, the farmer, inside these, and they can sustain injuries, if not death, as a result. Other examples of confined spaces on a farm include a manure storage facility, a manure lagoon. That is considered a confined space because it is not meant for consistent occupancy and work. And so it presents drowning hazards as well as other very toxic gases such as hydrogen sulfide, which is odorless. And a worker, if they breathe that for a very short amount of time, they can pass out and ultimately die as a result. Heat stress is another example of a farm hazard. And then we cannot forget about the chemicals and pesticides that may be used on a farm. So all of these are the big players of farm safety hazards, but then there are many others that are out there that I did not include in this slide. So when I speak about farm safety management, this includes a safety management program to basically present a platform or a framework for you to conduct work on your farm while mitigating or minimizing or even eliminating those safety hazards. In addition, as an employer, if you do have hired workers on the job, it is your obligation and your legal obligation, according to OSHA, for you to provide a safe workplace for those workers. And so I'm going to talk about those, what a safety management program entails, and how you might be able to implement a safety management plan. But an effective safety management and health program includes 4 primary elements. And first and foremost, it includes a management commitment, an owner commitment to safety. If an owner of a farm operation is not committed to safety, all the research shows that it's not going to work. A safety management plan will not work unless the owner, manager of the farm is committed to the safety of himself or herself, as well as the workers. And so that is paramount. But then also, if you do have workers on the farm, hired workers on the farm, employee involvement is also paramount. You need to include these workers in the establishment and the planning and the execution of the safety management plan. Otherwise, it will not work. You have to have workers involved. The second element of the safety management plan includes a work site analysis. What does this mean? This means that you have to map a mechanism in place where you or some designated person, safety designated personnel, will walk around and they will conduct daily, if not weekly, hazard assessments where they are walking around and they are looking for safety hazards and they are anticipating a safety accident that could happen based on what they see. And so we're going to talk a little bit about a work site analysis. If you do identify hazards, then you need to eliminate them or you need to control those hazards. Sometimes you're not going to be able to eliminate a machinery hazard or another work site area that may present a hazard. And that, if that's the case, then you need to control the safety hazards that are inherent in that situation. So you need to either eliminate it or you need to prevent and control the safety hazards. And then lastly, safety and health training. It behooves every owner of a farm to receive some type of health and safety training for them to learn how to mitigate hazards, how to identify hazards, and then also how to control those hazards. And then, especially if you employ workers, how to make sure that the workers are protected to the best of your ability on the farm so that they do not sustain an injury or a fatality. So all of these, especially management commitment and employee involvement, these are complementary elements, okay? So management commitment or owner commitment to a safety management plan, that provides the motivation as well as the resources that are needed to have a safety program. Employee involvement, that allows workers to develop and express their commitment to safety and health. And what we have seen, if you provide the resources and the training and you are committed to the safety management program, that facilitates a positive, strong safety culture on a farm, and your workers are going to be committed to that. If you don't have any workers, then you're taking care of yourself, and then you need to be thinking safety in mind in everything that you do, because your life is important, and then your life is also important to others, your loved ones. And so everything that you do needs to have safety in mind. Policy and goals, okay? What do I mean by this? If you're a large employer where you have many workers, this is where you might have a written safety management plan. In fact, if you are a large employer and you're subject to OSHA, they require this. They require an employee to have a safety management plan. And this plan includes or states very clearly that what this safety and health policy is, and how every single work site on a farm, those hazards associated with those are controlled. What are you going to do? How do you identify those hazards? That sort of thing. And then it can include chemicals. How do you manage your chemicals that could be dangerous to you and the workers? In fact, OSHA requires that you have a chemical management plan. Your safety management policy and goals needs to involve management and workers in implementing the program. And you could take it a step further, and then you could have a process of standardizing the work, that every work task on the farm is done the same way every time in a consistent manner. That way you can make sure that things are done safely. So that means you would be standardizing the processes. And I understand farms are very dynamic work sites, and they are very challenging work sites, and every single day is different. But if you can implement some standardization on the more hazardous tasks, that way you can make sure that you and your workers are protected. Worker involvement. If hired workers are employed on a farm, you need to encourage the workers to get involved in the program and delegate authority to them to make decisions. That way that they can help protect themselves as well as their coworkers, as well as even you. You need to instill a culture on your work site, your farm, where everybody is looking out for each other. And if someone is doing something in an unsafe manner, they need to identify it and stop that work and tell them, hey, we need to do things different. This is not right, okay? So that means communication is big. You need to have a program in place where everyone is communicating with one another. Communication is key in a safety management plan. I was asked to here recently involved in a fatality case, and reading the report, the EMS could not get to the injured worker in time because they could not locate where the incident took place out on this farm. It was in a remote rural area. So it's not just communication between workers, it's also communication with those outside of the farm. I would encourage you to think about this and think about, okay, in the event something happened on the farm, how fast can my local EMS arrive to take care of me or a worker? And so I always encourage farm owners to open up a dialogue with your local EMS, whether it's your volunteer fire department or fire department, ambulance services, or even the police. Talk to them, invite them out for a barbecue, and let them know this is where we are located, and provide them a map of your property. You know, in the event if something were to happen and you were to call them, you can tell them exactly where to go, because unfortunately this happens way too often on farming operations where a worker is injured and killed and EMS cannot get out there in time because they don't know where to go. They don't know where to make a turn on a dirt road. And so that is really paramount. Invite them out, even allow your local EMS to conduct, safety drills. They need training opportunities all the time. And so I'd encourage you to strike up a dialogue with your local EMS and let them come out and see the property and talk about safety and how long it would take for them to get out in the event that an injury takes place. So who is responsible for health and safety? Okay, those parties, those individuals who are responsible for the safety and health program, they must have the authority as well as the resources, the authority to make decisions. Sometimes it's just you, the producer, you and a spouse, where you don't have any injured workers, or even you may have your kids on the farm, working on the farm. You need to know who is responsible and what to do in the event of a safety incident. What is the plan? So I would suggest that you designate a person on the farm who is responsible for safety and health, to learn the rules, learn the standards, learn OSHA, and learn all the different mechanisms to control those safety health hazards on the farm. If you do have hired workers on the farm, managers, supervisors, as well as their employees must be held accountable. They must be held accountable for not following safety procedures. They must be held accountable for not following the rules and regs that are designed to protect their health and safety. They need to be, at least at a very minimum, you need to have a talking with them. If you observe a worker doing something unsafe, then you need to stop the work and you need to have a talk, okay? And they need to understand what is expected of them, okay? If you do not communicate with workers what their expectation is, then they are not going to know how they are to perform on the job. What is the performance expectation? And that would include performing their job in a safe manner. So that is your responsibility as an owner or as a manager to convey that to your workers. Employers are required by OSHA to provide a safe workplace. That's the law, okay? So it is your responsibility to provide a safe workplace, especially to hired workers. I encourage you to review your operations at least annually. I would recommend more frequently, at least on a quarterly basis, to identify deficiencies in your safety management plan, and then revise those as needed. We all know that your operations change. They are dynamic. You bring on new machinery on a farm, new chemicals on a farm. In fact, OSHA mandates anytime if new chemicals are introduced on a farm, all parties that work with that chemical have to be trained on that chemical. That's the requirement. And so, and then lastly, if you do have managers or supervisors, the frontline supervisor is responsible for assisting workers to do their job safely. When I mean assisting, that means educating them, training them how to do the job in a safe manner. So a little bit more on the owner and the manager responsibilities. You need to be able to analyze the work to identify potential hazards. How do you go about doing that? There are many resources out there, training resources out there to identify farming hazards. And many of those you already know, Okay. Some of them you may not know. And so, but you need to have a mechanism in place to where you know what hazards to look out for and have a mechanism in place to walk around on a farm and look for these hazards. If you do identify these hazards, it is your responsibility to eliminate or if you cannot eliminate them, you need to control those hazards that you have identified. If you cannot eliminate the safety hazards, then you have to put in some mitigation controlling mechanisms to where you protect workers from those hazards that may result in an injury or a fatality. And then lastly, it is your responsibility, if you have hired workers, to train them on safety and health. You need to reinforce safety and health through training. So, like I said, you need to examine the work site, identify those existing hazards and those conditions and operations that change over the course of time and that may create new hazards. That's why you conduct safety hazard assessments frequently, if not quarterly, because farms change all the time. New processes are introduced, new chemicals, new machines. Owners and or the managers must actively analyze the work and the work site to anticipate an unsafe condition and prevent those harmful occurrences from happening. So you have to be in the mode of looking for things that could happen. Even though they may not have ever happened in the past, they still may happen moving forward. And complacency is bad for a safety management plan. When nothing has never happened, oftentimes owners, managers, safety managers, they become complacent. They think that it will never happen on the farm. And then unfortunately it does. And so you always need to be looking and anticipating for safety hazards that may happen in the future. Comprehensive safety surveys. You need to conduct a comprehensive baseline survey for safety and health. And this is that job hazard analysis where you walk around on your farm, on your property, and you look for those safety issues. And so there are a number of different resources that are out there. OSHA has in every single state a consultation program for small businesses. Now let me explain something here. There are two branches of OSHA. There is the compliance branch, and they're involved with enforcing the law. But then also you have totally separate OSHA consultation programs that are out there. And these are designed to help small businesses who may not have the safety and health resources. They help them to become compliant with the OSHA standards. Now, I need to advise you, if you sign up for an OSHA consultation program and they come out to your farm and they do a hazard assessment and they identify some things that need to be fixed, you are obligated to fix those things. And they will follow up with you. If you have not fixed those things, then they will refer those issues over to the compliance side. But it behooves you. I mean, everybody wants to be safe, right? And so I've never heard of a business owner in ag or any other industry who was told that something was wrong that they did not fix it, because they want to protect themselves as well as their workers. Another resource are your insurance companies. You may have workers' compensation or property insurance. They may be able to provide you with some safety and health resources, if not consulting. There are independent consultants out there that you can hire to come out and do a safety audit or safety hazard assessment. And then I would refer you also to what we refer to as the NIOSH-sponsored Ag Health and Safety Research Centers. So NIOSH, which stands for the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, they are an agency under the Department of Health and Human Services. And they are funded by the federal government to conduct research and outreach for employers in the United States. And so they have, I think it's 10 or 11 ag health and safety research centers spread out all over the country. Our federal government and NIOSH recognized that agriculture operations present some significant health and safety hazards. They have a high fatality rate. And so they've created these research and outreach centers to address these issues. So here in Texas, we have a Ag Health and Safety Center over in Tyler, Texas at University of Texas Health Science Center called the Southwest Ag Center. So I'm a part of that one. I conduct research through that. But then like Nebraska, our participant on the call today, you're from Nebraska, there is a Ag Center at the University of Nebraska Health Science Center. A colleague there is Dr. Matt Noneman, and he's involved in that. And so wherever you are, there are some resources, at least through these NIOSH Ag Health and Safety Research Centers. And then lastly, academic institutions like Texas A&M University. We're a land grant institution. And, I'm here, I'm a resource for you. Other academic institutions may also provide resources, especially through the extension networks. So these inspections, how do you conduct these safety and health inspections? You need to conduct these on a regular basis, usually weekly, at least try to. And it can just be you walking around on your daily activities, just looking around for safety hazards. Establish daily work areas to inspect. And then think safety before beginning new tasks or processes. For example, before you get into your tractor, every single time you get into your tractor, just do a simple walk around, just looking for issues on the tractor. Same concept like pilots. And so our pilots will walk around an aircraft and look for issues before you take off that may pose as a safety issue. In fact, I was on a plane on Sunday about to take off. The pilot got on the plane, and after her walk around, and she identified that the plane sustained a bird strike, and so they had to take the plane out of commission, and which delayed my flight by several hours. These inspections provide a mechanism for workers without fear or reprisal to notify the owners or managers about these safety hazards so that they can fix them. You need to rely on your workers to report these safety hazards because you cannot be everywhere on the farm to find these things and see these things. Rely on your workers. If you have workers, rely on them to report to you any issues that may need to be addressed. You also need to investigate accidents, or what we refer to as near misses. And these near miss incidents are those that do not result in an injury or fatality, but could have. And so it's a safety incident that does not result in an injury or a fatality. You need to investigate these things. If something happens, you need to figure out what was the root cause of this incident. How might I be able to prevent this from happening in the future? Also, you need to analyze your injury and illness trends. If you have workers on the farm, you probably have workers' compensation insurance. Texas is the one state that does not require workers' comp, so you may not have workers' comp, but if you do, those injury and illness records should be provided to you by your workers' compensation company. Look at that data. Look at what those data points tell you. Where are these injuries taking place? What types of injuries they are, and how might I be able to prevent those from happening in the future? Start by determining that the hazard or that the potential hazard exists. First, you have to acknowledge that in order to prevent them from happening in the future. Where feasible, prevent the hazards by effective design or of the job or the job site. You need to engineer out these hazards, eliminate them if possible, or change the way that the job task is done. That way a safety hazard does not exist. If the hazard cannot be eliminated, then you're obligated, especially as an employer, to control those hazards, okay? Eliminate or control those hazards in a timely manner. So there are a number of different ways to control these hazards. Eliminating or substituting the hazard for a less, or the work task for a less dangerous way of doing things, those are ideal. Okay, either you totally eliminate the hazard or you substitute a safer way of doing things. Those are ideal ways of doing it. But when that cannot happen, then you have to control the safety hazard. And you do that through engineering controls. And that's where you isolate the hazard away from the people that are working around that area, like putting up a barrier or a PTO shaft shield to prevent a worker from becoming entangled in a rotating PTO shaft. That's an engineering control. The next effective or lesser effective mechanism are administrative controls. Those are your policies and procedures that are designed to carry out or how to do a job task that'll eliminate or mitigate the hazard. And then lastly would be personal protective equipment. This is the least effective way to control hazards. But if the hazard still exists, sometimes you have to wear a dust mask or gloves or a face shield to protect the worker from the hazard. Some more issues with hazard planning. Maintain the facility or the equipment. Make sure that your tractors and other machinery are well taken care of, that they're well maintained. That'll help to minimize the risk for an incident. Emergency planning, and then we talked about this, a medical program. Do you have first aid on site? Do you have someone with at least basic first aid training to help take care of you or hired workers? And then consider your EMS response. How long will it take for local EMS to get out on the farm? And if there will be a delay, then you need to make necessary steps to provide on-site first aid until they can arrive. Training, a little bit about training. If workers are employed on a farm, you need to address the safety and health responsibilities of all personnel. You need to incorporate safety and health training into their overall job training, as well as the expectations that you place on them on how to do the job. You expect them or should expect them to do the job in a safe manner. That way that they do not put themselves at risk or their co-workers. And so they need to be expected to perform their job in a safe manner. Safety training. OSHA mandates that any safety training provided to workers needs to be presented in a manner where they understand. And this includes a language that they understand. If I put this slide in here, this is a letter directive from David Michaels, the OSHA director, back in 2010. And basically what it says is that if you have non-English speaking workers on the job, you need to provide safety training to them in the language that they understand. Sometimes you have workers who cannot read. And so you need to come up with a mechanism to provide safety training to them that they understand without having to read materials. It's basically presenting safety materials in a manner that they can understand. So it's very important. And if you do have hired workers, this is required of you by OSHA as an employer, that you need to provide your safety training in a manner that they understand. They must understand the hazards that they may be exposed to and how to prevent them to protect themselves and others. And like I said, the orientation training must be given on the site, to the site and contract workers. Meaning if you have contract personnel that comes out and performs services on the job, you at least need to tell them that you expect them to perform their job in a safe manner. And so contract workers are no exception, that they need to be performing their job task on the farm that meet your safety expectations. Here are the safety training needs. Workers need to understand how to recognize safety standards, training required in specific OSHA standards. Sometimes this is a little too detailed for hired workers. They just need to understand some details, especially like the chemicals that they may be using. OSHA does mandate that all workers who use chemicals or who are work around chemicals, that they are educated on the hazards associated with those chemicals. And so they need to, that is a requirement by OSHA. Emergency response, what are they supposed to do in the event of a catastrophic event? Let's say an explosion or someone else gets injured, that sort of thing. Everybody needs to understand their role. Accident investigation and emergency drills. These are also training topics that can be integrated into a safety management plan. Lastly, we'll talk a little bit about record keeping and documentation. I recommend that if you do have workers on the farm, you need to document all safety trainings. That way, in the event of, unfortunately, a fatality or an injury, you might be involved in some litigation, and you can provide to legal representatives that you have provided safety training to workers. And you can provide this as evidence of your overall safety management plan. You need to document that you are having safety meetings, any corrective actions, accident investigations. Just keep documentation on anything related to safety on the farm. And all of this will serve as due diligence as evidence of your safety compliance in the event that a regulatory authority, i.e. OSHA, comes knocking on your door and they want to look at your records. And if you do provide training, I strongly recommend that you ask your workers to provide their signature on each training. That way that provides proof that they participated in the training and they received it. When multiple workers are on your operation, make sure that you have very clear communication channels. You need to have meetings, safety meetings. Whenever you have a meeting on the farm, talk 1 or 2 minutes about safety, a new safety issue on the farm. Just include safety in your meetings. You can have posters, bulletins, even a safety suggestion box if you do have multiple workers who that way provides them a mechanism to provide some safety suggestions. And then all communication should be documented if warranted. So I'm going to stop there. I've got 11 after the hour, and hopefully you got a little bit about this, about where to start on a safety management plan. I'm going to go ahead and throw out my personal email here at Texas A&M University. Because I work for a public institution, it is my mission to help our citizens in the state of Texas. If you have any questions or safety related issues that you want to ask, please do not hesitate to send me an email, or even give me a call. I can shoot me an email. We can have a conversation. I've helped many ag producers across the country to address very unique and awkward safety issues. Sometimes it's an OSHA compliance issue. Am I subject to OSHA regulation? What do I do? I've had owners call me up when they've had a fatality on the farm. What do I do? And so, I've had to help them, get a safety management plan up and running. And so if there's really anything that I can do as a representative of Texas A&M and, this land grant institution that I work for, please do not hesitate to reach out to me or give me a call, email anyway. I'm willing to help any way I can.